What's going on, guys? This is Sora, or known as Soviet Base, if you know me as the Soviets, as the CCA. Hello, what's going on? It's very, an interesting video, actually. I wanted to talk about, my theories, about the Furies, and stuff, and how this all, kind of like fits in. The timeline itself is a little bit confusing. I never really knew about the timeline itself. Um, but I wanted to talk about my theories, about the Furies themselves. Um, so if you don't actually recall, if you've never seen my other videos from me playing Battlezone 98, um, there's like this one mission that I played, and it's basically the Soviet mission, and it was on instant action on single player, and I think it was called Strain 3, I believe. I have to take a look at the mission again, but um, basically, um, of course, the Furies themselves, the original creators, the actual original creators that did the Furies was actually the Haydens themselves, and technically the Haydens were the first ones to make the Fury technology. Um, they didn't like the United States or the Soviets at all. They actually were against both factions. Um, and the NSDF and Soviet during 1998, I think, if I remember correctly, the Americans and Soviets was doing a space race, but it was taking it somewhere near the Cold War, basically. And so the Americans had reinforcements, but they were on their main base, which was Eagle Nest 1, and they didn't have a whole lot of resources. So they sent a recycler that only was able to create turrets themselves, because as the Soviets themselves are known as, of course, the CCA, um, they were the ones to try to take over Eagle Nest 1. Basically, that was the Russians' main goal, was to take over the moon itself. But what happened was, when the Russians took over Eagle Nest 1, um the moon was the Soviets' outpost now on there. It was considered as the Soviet outpost for Eagle Nest 1. But for the Americans themselves, the NSDF, they had to evacuate off the moon, and basically they had to go to the next planet, which is Mars. But the Soviets already beat them to Mars, and they were there first before the Americans arrived. Of course, they found later on Mars, they found a strange relic that was containing unknown artifacts, and considering that the artifacts it was actually developed by the Olympians Council and the Haydens. There was different relics that was talking about stuff like that, and the Haydens, of course, known from Battlezone 2, they were also involved in this war of the Biometal Wars themselves, and the Haydens were basically around like near the Roman Empire time. So if you notice that the Roman Empire didn't exist anymore later on, the Roman Empire um just collapsed, and the Haydens actually were the ones to still be alive and still actually breed, but they were never really a good faction. Basically, they were an evil organization. Um, and then besides that, like I was saying, they were involved in the Biometal Wars. Um, but it was actually between the Olympias Council, and then you got the Haydens. So they were fighting each other, but they were also, the Haydens was also involved in the Biometal Wars with the NSDF and, of course, the CCA. So now, that I got that part um put together, now we're moving to how the artifacts on Mars. So basically, you know, they found the artifacts on Mars, so the NSDF had to send a tug to go and pick that up. They already found out that they brought the tug back to their base and was an alien's artifact that was created by, of course, the Hayden's crown, or known as just the Haydens. Um, the Haydens were like, they were like, it's hard to explain it with the Haydens. They're like robot human, like, and they look like they're Egyptian basically, but they're not though. Um, they have like this futuristic Egyptian look to them. But besides that, after the Americans got their hands on Mars, I can't say it right, on the relic itself on Mars, then they went to the next one, which is Venus. The Soviets um, were on Venus too, but I think if I remember correctly, I think the Americans got there before the Soviets did. So they technically found out, um, they destroyed the Soviets' radar array, but they did found a giant relic which was known as the Hydra, and that was known for Styx. Styx is how the Soviets managed to create a walking machine known as their golem. And of course, I love the Russian golems. I always loved Russia so much. Um, but that's how they created the golem themselves, and only just because getting the artifacts and to creating the metal pieces into creating their walker. But the NSDF didn't get the walker until later on in the last two missions, I believe. And so now after they got that and they found another artifact, they went to a moon. I think it was Idaho next. I think they went to Idaho, and during that cutscene when I was listening to, they found out now that the Grizzly One's prologue was talking about that we found a relic, and the project was actually known as Project Furies. And knowing as Project Furies, they were not good. They were very deadly. Um, I will explain more about them a little bit later on. So after that, the Americans, the NSDF had to deliver these convoy, um, the little mini of their convoy, the three tugs, to the launch pad. The Soviets wanted to prevent the Americans from getting off Idaho, so they destroyed the first launch pad on Idaho. So the Americans re-established another launch pad, which was a pretty smart idea. Um, so they already did that. They already know that they already made another launch pad. So they go to the launch pad. They actually put gun towers there, so they will protect the launch pad themselves. They go to the launch pad. They get off of Idaho. Then they actually go to another moon, which is known as Europa. So, of course, one of the NSDF pilots, had to go on Europa on foot to snipe a Russian fighter, which is one of my favorite The flankers that I like more than the Tsar tanks. They are very interesting. They look like little vulture birds. They're one of my favorite ships to use, but they're not very powerful. They're really fast, but they're not strong. And basically, the NSCF pilot had to snipe one of the fighters, the Soviet fighters, to actually get intel on where their main base is located and their HQ. And so basically, they found out that they're taking the Furies and themselves to their main HQ, which is the moon of Titan. So Titan is where their main HQ is, the Soviets' HQ. The Americans, before they had to go to Titan, they wanted to clean up basically all of that stuff. They wanted to clear out Europa first before starting to move their forces to Titan. So basically, after they completed, sorry, my mind's like in La La Land right now. I do apologize about that, and of course, I know that sometimes my mind just drifts off into space. I do apologize, but after that, I do apologize about that again. I'm sorry. Um, After they cleaned up Europa, then they started to move their forces to Titan, and this is where the things will be completely go wrong. So the NSCF had to go to the 3 distress beacons that the Black Dogs actually sent. So if you never played the let the Black Dogs, I forgot what that mission was called. Um the let me see. I gotta take a